Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's get started with a story that's all about a grocery store showdown, complete with ground beef, loud accusations, and a calm manager who knew exactly how to handle the chaos. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. A loud beef over ground beef. Grocery store drama. I work at a fairly big chain grocery store. They're branded different in different parts of the country. I live in Ohio, USA for reference. I manage the whole front end from carts to cashiers to customer service. Oh, and we do have an off-duty police officer at our store most of the time. On to the story. Sorry, this is a long one. I was talking to the police officer when one of my cashiers came up to me with a receipt and a rather angry guy trailing behind him. My cashier's trying to explain the situation to me, and the customer keeps butting in trying to tell his side. My cashier gets frustrated and asks the guy to let him, cashier, explain the situation to me. The customer shuts up and walks away a little. My cashier runs self-checkout where people scan their own stuff. He realized as the guy was walking out the door that the customer did not scan his ground beef. He follows the guy to his car, not what we're supposed to do, but okay, and asked him to come in and pay for the ground beef. Cashier clearly sees 2 packages of ground beef. The guy agrees to come in and pay. The customer puts the rest of the groceries in his car. Customer only brings in 1 package of ground beef, so my cashier just rings it up twice and the guy pays. After the customer pays, he starts saying that my cashier overcharged him as he only had 1 ground beef. This is where I come in. I talk to the guy in a pleasant customer service voice. He claims that my cashier is accusing him of stealing. He's getting louder. I ask if he had 1 or 2 ground beef. He said 1. I pointed out that my cashier said he'd seen 2. The police officer comes over and says the easiest solution is for me to go out to the guy's car, verify if he has 2nd ground beef, and go from there. Customer refuses to let me check his car, gets louder, and then asks me to refund him the money, and he just won't come back. I agree and let him know I can only refund the 1 that he brought back. He says okay. So while I'm in the process of doing the return, the customer, who's still talking super loud, says that my cashier embarrassed him and it was totally inappropriate. The customer said this multiple times. My cashier tried to argue, at which point I said in front of the customer, "Don't worry about it." Him, the customer, being loud and yelling, is embarrassing himself more than anything either of us have done to him. Customer shuts up. I finish his return and politely wish him a pleasant day. It's almost like these problems could be easily circumvented by hiring a couple of extra cashiers instead of implementing a self-checkout that people with 482 items will take an hour on. And our second story. When Karen demanded malicious compliance in the workplace. About 10 years ago, I worked for a large organization with many different departments. My role was a subject matter expert who worked across various areas. My goal was simple: make the lives of my colleagues easier. It worked. Everyone loved me for that. But of course, it came back to bite me because they started expecting me to work miracles. Before I started, someone had decided to split a department into 2. However, they didn't really do it properly. The system still saw them as 1 department. To make matters worse, the 2 department heads absolutely despised each other. My solution was to create a workaround in the system I managed. This made the 2 departments appear separate, while in reality, in all other systems, 1 department still showed as part of the bigger one. And if you looked closely at my reports, the workaround was very obvious. The head of the smaller department got fed up with this and asked me to fix it. I explained that the issue lay at the organizational level. She needed to get written authorization from the higher-ups to change the official structure. Once that was done, the other systems would follow suit. If I made the change in my system without authorization, something would break and she'd have even bigger problems than just having to ignore a header in her reports. She insisted that if I made the change in my system, it would cause a domino effect. The other departments, who were less helpful than I was, would be forced to make similar changes. I tried to make light of the situation, joking that I might look powerful because I could get things done for her, but this was beyond my control. She had to deal with the bureaucracy. I couldn't help her on this one, and my response only frustrated her more. We went back and forth on this for about a year. Finally, one Friday afternoon, she snapped. She called me and demanded that I make the change or else. I calmly explained again that things would break, but she wasn't having it. She cut me off, saying I had to do as she asked or else. Cue malicious compliance. I asked her to put her request in writing. Always cover your bases. She sent me an email right away. I responded promptly, reiterating that making the change would break things. We'd discussed this before, but since she insisted, I'd make the changes ASAP. I organized the change in my system and stopped by my boss's office on my way out. I explained what was happening and warned him about the potential fallout. He chuckled and wished me a good weekend as the change was easily reversible. We both agreed that the problems would be frustrating but minor and no one would die, so there was no need to worry too much. Monday, 11 a.m., the department head calls me fuming. Apparently, she couldn't see any of her staff in the HR system. I calmly told her, that sounds about right. Now that my system and HR don't agree, computer says no. I reminded her that I had told her things would break. I offered to switch my system back, but she hung up on me. I later heard that she called the HR person who told her that the only way to get the change she wanted was to follow the process I had pointed out to her for the past year. The HR person also told her that only she had the authority to ask for the change. By the end of the day, she was scrambling, pulling favors to fast-track the process I'd suggested months ago. All of this could have been done without anything breaking. By the time of our next meeting, everything was properly sorted. The situation was never mentioned again. But from that day forward, if I told her I couldn't do something, she took my word for it. To me, this sounds like it worked the way she intended. She just misunderstood her own plan. The next step was to then institute her domino effect and have HR fixing their system so she can see her staff be call number 2. And it's oh so urgent for her to manage her staff properly, so they need to prioritize her request now. Wasn't that her whole idea from the get-go? And our last story. Entitled Karen threatens to sue a fisherman. So one day I was visiting Truckee in California over the weekend. There's a great little fishing spot where I tend to find trophy-sized brown trout on the west end of Donner Lake. I carry a 2-rod fishing license so I can cast bait on one rod and cast lures on the other. It's also important to know the bridge has a sign on it that specifically says no jumping or diving from the bridge. So anyway, I'm at this spot under a bridge casting out. It's been a slow day and I haven't caught anything yet. No big deal though. It's just nice to be out with everything going on in the world. The occasional paddleboarder or kayaker comes by, waves, and turns around because there's not much clearance under this bridge, and they're respecting that I'm fishing there. So along comes this little kid. I don't see him, mind you, and he starts jumping off the bridge. As you can imagine, I'm not happy. Any chance I had of catching fish just went completely away for a few hours. Fish are frightened very easily, so something like jumping off a bridge scares them, and they hide. So I, not so politely admittedly, tell this kid he needs to stop. He needs to leave. He's not welcome here. I'm on the shoreline, not the bridge itself, and this lady from above starts yelling at me that her kid can do whatever he wants. I again, not politely, point out the no jumping from the bridge sign. Her kid jumps off again and she tells me I need to stop fishing there. She claims they were there first and I was not properly socially distancing, so I was violating their privacy. I took a short video of the kid jumping off. By short, I mean like 5 minutes long. I tell her absolutely not and continue to cast out. Well, as luck would have it, her kid jumps right into my lure. Not immediately, it was like his 10th jump while his mom and I were going back and forth. I'm using a size 6 hook, which is about 1 inch long, and it jams right into this kid's leg. Naturally, he panics and fails to safely swim back in. He flops around in pain and starts driving the hook deeper into his leg, breaking my line. When he makes it back in, sure enough, my lure's sticking out of his leg, but being stabbed by a lure isn't actually too damaging. Well, except for the barb on the hook, which prevents it from coming out. So his mom comes rushing down, screaming that I assaulted her baby, and calls the police while trying to remove the lure. She also let me know she'll make sure I pay for any long-term damage. I just watch because it's clear to me she has no idea what she's doing, and her attempts to remove the hook are making it worse. I warned her, though, and this was her problem, not mine. So police get there after about 15 minutes, and I'm still casting out lures. I already knew what was going to happen. The lady lies and explains that I was intentionally casting at her kid and that they were there first swimming and having a good time. Police come to see my story and just show them my fishing license, my setups, and my video of her kid jumping off the bridge. I don't say anything else, I just let them piece it together. So here's the thing. Intentionally messing with a fisherman is a serious crime. They see my lure in his leg, they see I'm here legally, and the kid breaking literally the only rule I could prove they broke. They go back to his mom, who confesses she may have let him jump off a few times, and they explain to her that she's committed a crime and I may press charges if I want. She looks at me in disbelief and starts screaming about how I maimed her kid. So I explain, less than politely, that I will not push charges if I can get my lure back in the next 10 minutes. A task I know is borderline impossible. So this mom gets to ripping and tearing at the lure, refusing my help, and proceeds to torture her poor kid for 10 minutes. I didn't get my lure back, and true to my word, decided to press charges. The police took the lady away in cuffs and sent for paramedics to get the lure out. I'm not sure what happened next, but I didn't get my lure after the paramedics took him away. Not a big deal, it's only like $4. Not that I like losing $4, especially when fish is my main food source. I wish I could end on a happy note and say I caught a fish, but I didn't. I did fetch about 2 pounds of crawfish, though. Also, it's pretty common that random kids F with fishermen while we fish. They throw rocks, jump in by our lures, and generally sabotage us. Most kids just don't know better and leave after we tell them to, but some are just real entitled pains in the butt. Karen should have told the kid to stop, or the kid should have had common sense not to jump near where someone's fishing and where there's clearly a posted sign that says no jumping. It'd be one thing if he said the 10 minutes thing and just stood there and laughed, but he offered help. If the mom had just accepted, she could have avoided charges and hurting her kid more. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.